Welcome to the NAPE YouTube site. This is the second video on the teaching of Oracy in primary schools. Many thanks to Professor Neil Mercer for his invaluable assistance.
I think dialogues are important because if we don't have dialogues, no one really understands us.
First man on the moon, the communications between the rocket and the computers. If we couldn't communicate, then we wouldn't know what was happening aboard the ship and what to do.
Neil, thank you very much indeed for coming to the NAPE YouTube site today. Neil, is it true that you are head of what is called the Hughes Hall Centre for Effective Spoken Communication?
Yes, I am. It's one of several centres at the University College Hughes Hall, which is concerned with the relationship between practice and research, really. And it's been we had the centre set up in about 2017, I think. So yes, that's exactly what I do now.
That is great. I mean, when I look at the website, your welcome video, and that's the first thing you see really, is because it says welcome, is you discuss the overriding importance of developing Oracy skills in the classroom and beyond, of course. Could you perhaps summarise the teaching of Oracy, and why should it be given a sort of higher profile in primary schools?
Well, I think Oracy is something, as you say, that I think many of us realise hasn't been given a high enough profile in education. In fact, Andrew Wilkinson, who was a professor of education at UEA back in the 60s, I think it was when he invented the word Oracy, because he felt there was nothing equivalent to literacy and numeracy, which sound rather grand, and all we had was talk or speaking and listening and things like that. So the idea was to try and raise its profile. It didn't really entirely work then, in the sense that there was a national Oracy project in the late 80s, but then when a Back to Basics government came in, they said, "Oh no, it's, we should be really going back to the important things, and chat in the classroom is." And we've had to fight that battle for a long time.
Yes.
That we're trying to say, oh, children should be allowed to chat more, and we're not saying that. It's not saying that. Just like we're not saying with literacy, oh, they should be allowed to scribble on bits of paper whenever they like. It's not that. That's not the idea. The idea is that children, young people, should be encouraged to develop their spoken language skills in school and enabled to do that by their teachers in the way that they are enabled to become proficient in maths, science, and knowledge of history, sport, whatever. And it's something that needs to be given more attention. So that's really what's meant by giving it more attention, I think.
Yes, and in terms of summarising the teaching Oracy, I think there's a slide I can bring up to help this discussion.
Great, thanks very much.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's one that I use when I'm talking to teachers.
Right. Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, we like to say, we find it useful to say there are two aspects of Oracy. And when I say we, I don't just mean Oracy Cambridge. We've worked a lot with the leading Oracy charity in the UK, Voice 21, and they make this same distinction based on what we've got up here. If you think of Oracy education, the teaching of Oracy, as you've said, well, that would be learning how to talk. But we think there's another aspect, which is learning through talk. If you think about it, talk is the main tool of a teacher's trade, isn't it? I mean, whenever we're doing some teaching, we're nearly always talking. And using talk effectively for teaching and learning is something that a good teacher does. We always say in RSC Cambridge, in fact, in University of Cambridge in education generally, we don't sit in ivory towers thinking of clever things from research to tell teachers. What we've typically gone out and done is look to see what really good teachers do when they're in the classroom, and then distill it down to its essence, and to test out why that works and how that works. So that's very much what we're trying to do. And so when we're talking about learning through talk, we're really talking as much as anything about the teacher's Oracy skills, their own ability to use spoken language and organise the use of talk in the classroom to enable teaching and learning to happen very well. And we know from recent research we've done at Cambridge, and other research done, for example, at the University of York by Robin Alexander and his colleagues, that in primary classrooms, the ways teachers use talk make a massive difference, not only to students' involvement in their education, but actually to the results. We actually found you get better results in maths and English if you use talk in certain ways. And in the York project, which was funded by the EEF, it's up on their website, they got the same sort of results in science, maths and English. And so we actually know it does make a difference. And we know now that the way of using talk most effectively in the classroom can be called dialogic teaching. It means that you're actually involving the students, the children, in using talk for their own learning, and that the teacher is engaging them in certain sorts of interaction, being very careful about how they use talk themselves, but they're also getting the children to use talk more for their own learning.
Here's a battery, these are inside the torch, but what is inside this battery? Using the cards, can the person with a green sticker take the card, please? Okay, you're the first person to ask the other two the question.
Why do you think that, Alice? Why not anything else? I think it might be better for the environment and it's not wasted.
What things about the talk this morning do you think have helped you learn about each other's opinions and about the poem, the batteries? What do you think, what use was it?
I think it really helped us build a friendship and understanding of each other.
And they're sort of two sides of the same coin, these two aspects. So you can't really separate them, but they're worth looking at separately. As I say, I think it helps to distinguish them. So on the one hand, we've got the learning through talk. That's how a lesson's being conducted. How is the teacher choosing to use talk with the students and with the children? How well are they presenting information themselves through the talk medium? And how are they engaging the students in using talk for their own learning? The other side of the coin, which funny enough is one that Robin Alexander, who's promoted the learning through talk, dialogic teaching side of things very effectively, it tends to get lost, this other side. And I think we all in Oracy Cambridge and Voice 21 think this is equally important, and this is teaching children how to use spoken language. It's Oracy education, so they get Oracy education like they get maths education or sports education or whatever, and you're developing their spoken language skills. So these two aspects, I think, are crucial. As I say, they're two sides of the same coin, but you can see how they are usefully distinguished, I hope. Does that make sense, Mike?
Very clear indeed. I think that's
good.
very useful.
Good.
Okay, I'll just come out of there, come back to us if you like. And therefore, in a way, I can almost see what the driving philosophy of RSC Cambridge is about, but perhaps you could spell it out for us.
Yeah. One of the things that we are we're known as at the university is a bridge centre, and there are several based at the College House Hall, and they are meant to make this link between a two-way bridge between research and practice. So you're not only saying what has been found out in research that would be useful to practitioners, but what the practitioners want to know that we can find out more about. And there are other centres to do with climate change, to do with digital futures and global health, but we're one of them. So our philosophy is the same as theirs in that sense. But what we are trying to do that's distinctive is promote the importance of oracy in education and other spheres of life. Because, as we've just discussed, we think it's been underrepresented. And I think it's very clear that this is still the case. I mean, when I talk to the PGCE students at the beginning of a year at Cambridge, when I've done that, there might be up to 200 of them going to do primary education teacher training at Cambridge. And I'll ask them, how many of you were expressly taught how to use spoken language well in your schools? And typically, say there were 200, you get at the very, very most 20 people putting their hands up. Wow. And I'd say, what kind of schools did you go to? And they say, private schools. And that's almost all of them will have gone to some sort of private school.
That's very sad, isn't it?
It's
Yes.
terrible. And that's the way it's been for a long time. We've had a fight with the government to try and get Oracy into the curriculum. There's a parliamentary, all parliamentary groups been promoting Oracy recently.
Yes,
and we've had the message back that it's not that important. And apparently it's important for their children, but not for ours, because they're all giving it space in private schools. And I think this is still a tragedy, really. I mean, there's even a conspiracy theory about it, which is they don't want our children to learn Oracy skills because then, wow, God, they might get elected to Parliament and we start, taking over the country again. So whether that's true or not is irrelevant. The point is, it's only in very recent years that many schools have started, state schools have started to take on Oracy as something they think.
Well, that is good news. Yes.
Yeah, and so we're really trying. Our philosophy is let's help them and to do that as well and effectively as we possibly can.
I mean, there's a tremendous amount of resources on the website. I'll just, if I may, switch over to that screen. Let's see. Can you see that? All right.
Yeah, I can see it there. I hope.
Excellent. Right. I mean, as I said, there's a tremendous amount there, and one which sort of sticks out really to start off with for me when I'm looking is the Oracy Skills Framework and the glossary which goes with it. Is there anything you would like to comment on that?
Well, this is something we created by discussing, by consulting lots of experts in relevant fields such as sociolinguistics, drama education, English education, aspects of training for jobs and so on. And we were trying to find out what are the real things that are involved in using spoken language well, because there was nothing like it. We were surprised to find when we began doing this work. And it seemed a shame because it really would help to know what are the different facets or features of Oracy, of spoken language skill that children might be good or bad at. I mean, people will have different profiles. For example, you might have somebody who's a very good speaker in the sense they project their voice well, physical, under the physical heading there. They pronounce their words very precisely, or at least clearly so everybody can hear them. But perhaps they don't organise the content very well. So it's not a very good speech in that sense. So that would be the cognitive aspect. The content is not being well organised. Yes. Well, you might get somebody with a very different profile who's good at doing that, but not at projecting their voice. You might get someone who's very good at making speeches, as many politicians are, but you might find that they're not that good at working with others using talk, that is sitting in meetings and collaboratively solving problems. I think you might find that there's a lot of politicians who are very good at speaking in public, but they don't seem that good at listening. And yet listening is an equally important skill. So under the social and emotional heading there, the strand, you've got there working with others. So a teacher can consider in their class, how do their different children fit in terms of these different skills? You wouldn't need all the skills in any one situation. For example, under physical, you've got body language, facial expression and eye contact.
Yeah.
Well, body language is fairly important in this situation, isn't it? I tend to wave my arms around a lot. I hope it's not too distracting. But if I was on the phone to you, Mike, it would be totally irrelevant whether I had eye contact or whatever.
Yeah,
but it could be crucial if I'm sitting in a small group of people and working to try and solve a problem. So there are so in any one Oracy situation, if you like, you'll have a selection of these skills that are relevant. And what we suggest is that young people, as part of their Oracy education, need to know about this. They need to take it apart themselves and see inside speech, because it's such slippery stuff. And they should be able to examine it and look at it critically, so they can watch a speech by Boris Johnson or something like that and say, well, he pronounces his words very clearly, but the content isn't very well organised. And they can be critical in that kind of way.
Mm. Well, that's very useful. Let's go back to the resources page itself, and as the viewers can see, there's a proliferation of all sorts of booklets and charts. Is there any particular say guideline that you'd like to highlight?
Well, one thing you see what's come up there is discussion guidelines.
That one there.
Yeah. What we've found is when people are interested in that aspect of Oracy, which I've called Oracy education, that is teaching students, directly teaching them how to use talk better. I say, we're not saying let them talk more. We're saying they should be helped to purposefully use talk more effectively. There's often an assumption that we mean speech making and debating. Okay. That's what, if I'm interviewed by journalists, they typically say, so do you think there should be more debating in state schools like there is in public schools and so on? I say, well, that would be good, but equally important is another aspect of another way of using talk, which also gets left out, and that is working with others to solve problems. Because the way we are, for better or worse, masters of the universe, or at least of this planet, and it might not be for better, but we are, is because unlike other animals, we can collect our brains together in a sort of mega brain and solve problems collectively. And we can create new things. We've changed the environment to suit us rather than adapting to it in the way other animals are. Nobody builds buildings on their own on the whole. It's teams and collectives of people who've always done that. Yes. And that's how we solve problems. And we have to learn how to do that because it's not hardwired. So people need to learn how to think together, really. And that was originally the focus of our research back in the 90s, really. Lynn Dawes and Rupert Wegeroff and me, we actually were looking at how could children be helped to think together more effectively. And then we realized that everybody needs to learn how to think together as effectively as possible. And so what we've eventually come up with is this kind of resource, which is to get students, in this case, this is more aimed at secondary students, this particular list, to think themselves about, well, what do you think does make up a good discussion? What is the sort of thing that makes it work or fail? And you can find they'll think of things and they'll say, well, everybody should take a turn. Does that always happen? Well, no. I mean, in our group, the last group I was in, Trevor just spoke all the time, and everybody else just said, "Yeah." Or, well, what should happen is if I have a good idea, I ought to share it. Well, I know sometimes I've thought, well, this is a good idea. I'll keep this for my own assignment and not bother telling anybody about it. So you've got lots of ways that they have half insights into what makes a good discussion, but they're not necessarily bringing them together in a way that helps them work more effectively. And so that's where this idea of discussion guidelines came up. We also call them ground rules. That's the term we actually use often, because they're sort of things that aren't expressly said. The idea of ground rules is a term taken from sport, which means the local unofficial rules that operate in certain grounds or certain areas. So we took that idea up to describe the fact that in any talk situation, you've got rules. And if you're going to work well in those situations, you need to know the rules.
So if you're talking in a group or in the whole class or something like that, you've got to follow the talk agreement so it's fair in the group. So one of the talk agreements is don't try to become the leader of the group.
You have to, like Sylvia said, make it fair.
So what is it that makes a good discussion? What do you do to make sure you have a good discussion? I'm going to show you a set of things we call ground rules for talk. Make sure the children know what you're doing, that it's up to them, isn't it, to do the discussion. And if they have the right awareness of what it's all about and the point and purpose of reasoning together, then you're much more likely for them to be able to make it work for themselves and each other.
Well, definitely not talking over each other, and also if someone hasn't spoken, ask them to join the conversation so everyone can contribute.
The idea is that the children themselves are responsible for their own volume, and that could be one of their ground rules, if you like. it's not random talk or casual talk. The talk children expect to take part in is purposeful and focused on the task in hand.
The kind of talk we want to happen is what Douglas Barnes, one of my academic heroes, that I'm sure Mike you'll know of as well, who's still around, I'm glad to say, and we've had contact with recently. He called exploratory talk, which is where you're not producing a finished product of a speech, but you're actually thinking aloud. And we say in exploratory talk, people don't just interact; they interthink. They're actually interthinking. And that's what we want the children to do when they're in a group. And the difference
I must admit, when I get older, I do a lot of interthinking.
Yeah, well, I think we learn as we get older. We realise we can learn more from other people than we might have realised earlier on in our lives. I think
you mentioned Helen, and of course Helen went on a 3-day course over the year, and I think there's a residential as well. And I know that on the website, if I can bring that up now, you can actually see that. It says training there on the website. It says training and consultancy. So it's given some bullet points. It talks about embedding Oracy across the curriculum. And of course, the last video was very much about that.
It was, exactly, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was amazing. And she brought along all sorts of teaching ideas, which she obviously gained from the course, which in itself is incredibly valuable. But is there anything you would like to tell us about these courses?
Yeah, what we do is we offer CPD, professional development sessions for teachers in the UK and elsewhere. Sometimes it's for individual schools. It's often for groups of schools like academy chains or collections, local authorities or whatever. And what we try and do is really provide what we know from research, that's evidence-based, practical ways of embedding Oracy in a curriculum. We did an evaluation of the Camden Oracy project, which was a project in the borough of Camden, and we found that one of the common things that came out from head teachers and Oracy lead teachers and so on, they said how vital it was that there was a shared understanding of what Oracy meant in a school and amongst teachers who were working together in different schools. They all had to have be working on the same page and really understand what they were doing together. And that way it really was more likely to consolidate. And the other thing we found was it had to be whole school. If you've got one keen teacher working away in a primary school, as we've helped to do in the past, what can often happen is that teacher is a real enthusiast. It's just allowed to get on with it. But then probably the kind of teacher they are, they'll get promoted to a deputy head somewhere else. If you go back to that school, it's like nothing's ever happened. So it's got to have the senior leaders, the senior leadership team behind it, and every teacher's got to be involved, and then it will work. And that's the way I think it works.
That was the crucial question I did ask Helen, and it was quite clear also from the paper she wrote that she involved people straight from the start. The senior management, she said, were completely convinced anyway. Actually, when she turned to the staff, there was very little resistance because they clearly understood. They were trained professional staff, and they clearly understood the importance, the keystone that Oracy was within the curriculum, just not literacy, but the whole curriculum, and that was absolutely amazing. So if you haven't seen that video, viewers, you must see that first.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, in fact, I met one of Helen's colleagues at a recent conference called Future Forward in Education, and she made exactly the points you've just made.
Yeah. Now, was there anything else you wanted to add as we sort of draw to an end to this video?
I think one thing I'd like to say is there are sometimes some misunderstandings about Oracy. One of them, I think, as I say, is that it's about teaching children how to make speeches, when I hope I've explained it's about teaching them how to operate in a range of situations, such as working in a group, teaching someone to do something, listening well, when you're listening to somebody offering you some information. It's about the whole range. It's not only about that kind of obvious thing. And the other thing I'd like to say is it's not about teaching children to talk posh. There is, again, some people will think, oh yeah, what you're saying is, you should be, you're obviously helping them to lose their local accents and not use those dialect words. We're not saying that. I mean, Mr. Gibb, who used to be the Minister for Education, once amazingly said to me, why would anyone want to speak non-standard English? I can't imagine. And the reason is, my reason, which is when I'm in my local community, I like to feel part of it. And I always have. And I think there's absolutely no reason why people should think that developing your spoken language skills means losing anything from your speech repertoire. We're talking about broadening the speech repertoire, not narrowing it. You don't have to forget. I don't have to forget how to speak in Cumbrian dialect when I speak to you now, any more than I have to forget English when I speak French. I mean, and over the world, it's quite normal for people to what's called code switch between the dialect of Veneziano to standard Italian or whatever. But for some reason, some people don't be able to seem to see that. And we're really talking about broadening the repertoire of young people, not narrowing it or dismissing some aspects of it, least of all their local community language.
Yes, and so important in their cognitive development. Now, if I can take us across to links, which I'd like to share, because I found that page on the website incredibly useful. Let's see if I can find it. There it is. Now, you've got some really useful external resource links there.
That's right.
And public speaking, all sorts, Oracy assessment framework, and that takes you to the Cambridge faculty, I believe.
That's right, and you can see examples of children, young people, Year 7 students talking there, and you'll find some other ones too on that side.
Yeah.
For example, there are some videos of teachers leading group work, leading lessons on how to work well in groups. Yes. So that's the kind of thing. And you'll see down the other side, down the right-hand side, you've got lots of our publications.
Yes, there's all
freely available. And you can you can write to us, and we commonly get requests for information through the RSC Cambridge site. There's a link for that as well, and people can ask us, and we can reply as well as we can. So yes, I hope our links are useful.
Yes, I think
people to have a look.
It's funny because one of our council mentioned I've just come down to organisations, the English Speaking Union.
Oh yeah.
She was teaching in a school, and 95% of the children where English was a second language in Bedford. This was, and she was saying how invaluable it was that Oracy was up there in the school curriculum to help children who were sort of grappling with English. And indeed, she managed to get a group of children to speak, as it happens at a local independent school, as some sort of competition, and they did extremely well.
Great.
The resource in English Speaking Union is certainly worth looking at. Are there any other links you wanted to mention?
I'm a member of that, the English Speaking Union. You're right. They have some very useful links. The one that's just at the very top of the screen now, that one of the success stories we've had is working with the Welsh Government because they've actually introduced Oracy formally into the national Welsh curriculum. In the new curriculum, it's in there as a subject. And I think we provided the research evidence there which supported that. So they're well ahead of England in that sense. Scotland's ahead of England too, because we've got a big project up in Aberdeen, which which is also supported by Education Scotland. And one of the points we make in relation to what you've just said in that Oracy across the Welsh curriculum is about bilingualism, because of course Welsh is a bilingual curriculum. And that is, again, people shouldn't think that for children for who English is a second language, that they have to stop using their first language. as we say in there, all the evidence, the most recent evidence shows that bilingualism is a benefit to cognitive development. It gives you two ways of making sense of the world, and bilingual children score higher on, for example, tests of divergent thinking, for example. And there's absolutely no reason why you need to lose a language to learn another. And so I think, again, children need to be encouraged to see that developing their spoken language skills in English will probably help their spoken language skills in Urdu, because making a good speech in Urdu involves a lot of the same principles, or working with a group of people in Urdu makes the same sort of underlying principles and the ways you should operate as in English. So it's not an either or thing. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because again, I think people should realise that bilingual. I wish I'd been brought up bilingual. It would have been wonderful. And so people should be encouraged and to celebrate it in school, I think.
Yeah, that's great. If you want to see that comment that the National Council member made about English Speaking Union, it is on our website at the moment, link below.
I will, great, thank you.
So anyway, Neil, that's amazing. We've covered so much stuff about Oracy today, which sort of brings it into a sort of nice whole between yourself and Helen. In terms of the practical and the theory, the implementation, and how RSC Cambridge supports teachers in lots of different ways. So I thank you very much indeed, and thank you for joining the NAPE YouTube site. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.